anyways, I like David's words about derailing the gravy train, respect for taxpayers, and it goes back to the populist movement. If you see over the last few years, there's been this populist movement going around the world. No matter if it was Brexit, that they didn't think was going to win, or it's Donald Trump down in the U.S. I'll never forget, I went on, it wasn't Jerry's show, it was actually John's show, the show earlier on 1010, and it was when there was 21 candidates running for president. And I spent a lot of time down in the U.S. We have a business in Chicago and one in New Jersey and Toronto, so I travel frequently down there. And what I kept hearing, and I just think, Chicago, very Democratic. New Jersey, very Democratic. I kept hearing Donald Trump, Donald Trump. And this is when there was 21 candidates. So I got on 1010 and said a few words, and then he said, who do you think is going to win? And I said, Donald Trump's going to win. This is when there was 21 people in the race. Well, there was a big laughter in the room. Everyone was laughing and joking. What they missed, they live in a little bubble. All the elites in the establishment, they live in this little bubble, and they talk to their other friends in the little bubble, but they don't get out and meet the real people. I'll tell you what I mean by getting out and meeting the real people. Before I got involved in politics, and by the way, David, I'm not a politician. I can't stand politicians because they're all phony. They are. I'm a businessman that volunteers his time for the people. So I'm in Chicago one day and get a phone call from Rob, and I really didn't follow Rob's career as much as I wanted to because I was spending 5-6 days a week building our company in the U.S. And I said, and this is when he was a city councilor, I said, Rob, how you doing? I said, where are you? And he said, I'm out in Kingston Road. I said, what are you doing out in Kingston Road? That's out in Scarborough. That's not your ward. Well, he said, well, there's a big, huge garbage strike going on that David Miller created, and I don't know if a few of you can remember that. We had garbage all over the parks. He was buckling down to the unions and so on and so forth. He said, well, there's an elderly lady. She can't make it to the local garbage dump, wherever it was, the local park, and I'm picking up her garbage. And at that time, Rob had the little minivan, and he went and picked, I'll say Mrs. Jones's garbage up, put it in the back of his truck, and then he'd go down the street, pick up a couple other people's garbage, bring it back to Etobicoke where we had privatized garbage, and he'd empty the garbage. I can assure you, Mrs. Jones could be a staunch NDP, staunch liberal. She was voting for Rob Ford the rest of her life. Her family was, her neighbors were, because it's all about customer service. And the vast majority of you, if you've ever called a politician, try to call John Tory, see if you get a phone call back. Not going to happen. It's all about customer service, respecting the taxpayer, making sure that every single dollar that you have to pay in taxes gets respected. It's about having a transparent government and an accountable government. And when I say transparent, before we went down to City Hall, there were sole source deals. There were all their buddies feathering each other's nest, lining each other's pockets with multi-million dollars of sole source deals. Just imagine if you just went in there and said, I'm going to get a $50 million contract. It doesn't work that way in our business, in the private sector. You're out for bid. We put an end to that immediately. And I always told Rob, I said, Rob, we're going to go down there and we're going to pull their hands out of the gravy, or get them off the gravy train, pull their hands out of the taxpayers' pockets, and start putting money back into the taxpayers. But I said, Rob, I can assure you, as they say, the first through the door to make changes, they get a little bloodied. And man, was that an understatement. And in saying that, I welcome the nasty media here. There's a nasty Toronto Star back there, because they're about the worst media outlet, in my opinion, I've ever seen. And I guess they brought their cousins, the New York Times. They're just as nasty. And it comes down to the dishonest media. But we'll get into that a little down the road. So making sure it's transparent, we said, we're going to record all the votes. And they were stunned, all these other politicians. Now remember the days that there was votes, there's 44 councillors and a mayor, and there used to be votes 44-1. That was Rob voting 1 for the taxpayers. And I said, Rob, every time you lose out down at city council, you're winning with the public. Because they all stick together, they're all like sheep. And as soon as you do, how it works down there, folks, is if the councillor votes for them, the other councillor will vote for their vote. It doesn't matter if they agree or disagree. It's about integrity. It's about being principled. And right now, we don't have a mayor that's principled. And I'm not saying anything nasty about John Tory because he's a nice man. I've known him for 25 years. But when you go up there and you say you're going to run the government this way, and you get down there, and all of a sudden you hop on the gravy train, and we're back to the same situation we were under David Miller, with spending billions of dollars that we don't need, that's not being transparent. That's not being principled. You know how much heat Rob took, and I'm talking about being principled here, about not marching in the gay pride parade. He got pounded. Rob wasn't against the gay community whatsoever. He just had a belief inside him, right or wrong. A lot of people may disagree. Some people may agree. But what they try to do is bully him. Bully him to go down and march in the gay pride parade. And God bless the people. If they want to march, good for them. But again, they'll bully you into going. And it's supposed to be about inclusivity. I find that amazing, how they're kicking out our police and saying our police can't march. Like, give me a break. We have the greatest police force in the entire world. Not in the country, but the entire world. And people wonder why, again, this populist movement's happening. Look what's happening here in Canada. I'm going to start at the federal level. Justin Trudeau. You know, you go in there, you elect someone that's a camp counselor. This is the result that's going to happen. Folks, I wouldn't say this about Paul Martin. He's a smart businessman. I wouldn't even say this about Jean Chrétien. But electing a camp counselor that has absolutely zero experience, it's absolutely appalling. But it shows. I was with the Prime Minister Harper, yesterday. One of the best Prime Ministers we've ever had, bar none. And he's been pretty quiet. It was actually the first time he ever spoke. It was up in Vaughan for a PC candidate, and he's been pretty quiet lately. But just talking to him privately, it's astounded on how Jim Flaherty, one of the greatest finance ministers we've ever had, and a close friend to our family. And I'm sure Rob and Jim are looking down right now thinking, oh my goodness, what's happening to all the hard work? But actually left us with a surplus. And the Liberals go in there, in less than, a year and a bit, 2 years, it's $25 billion deficit. $25 billion, not mentioning the debt. And someone, yeah. And then someone who had to fill huge shoes for Jim Flaherty, I just looked over, and I see my friend Joe Oliver. A brilliant financial mind, incredible. He filled the big shoes, so it must make you sick every morning reading the papers, Joe. Seeing the billions of dollars they're racking up. And the same way I feel about the city of Toronto. I sat on the budget committee for 4 years. The only councillor that sat on the budget committee. We went line item by line item. And you find out a lot about how the taxpayers' money is being spent when you go line item by line item. When we went in there first, we were facing almost $1 billion of pressure going into the first year. And we said we'd find efficiencies. We found efficiencies. We found over $1 billion of efficiencies. We delivered a 0% tax increase the very first year, which they said it couldn't be done. They said you couldn't find any savings. We found over $1 billion. We ended up privatizing the garbage west of Yonge and saved $88 million. And it was all scripted out for John. He could have privatized garbage that people can't wait for privatization east of Yonge. another $88 million. But again, he buckled. He knew he didn't have the votes, so there's another $88 million. The state of affairs right now, folks, in Toronto, we left I call it the bank account. We left the bank account, the taxpayers' bank account. The reserves were full. We had a surplus of $180 million. We balanced the books for the first time in the history of Toronto. And within 2 years, the revenues have gone up through the land transfer tax, which in my opinion is just a total tax grab that we don't need. The revenues went up a few $100 million. The operating budget has gone up over $1 billion a year, and it's going to be compounded year after year after year. That's $4 billion. And they talk about, you know, they need money. They come cap in hand to the province, cap in hand to the feds. We never went cap in hand once to the federal government. We never went once to the province, because Kathleen wouldn't talk to us anyway, so it didn't make a difference. But we never went cap in hand once to them, because we had our financial house in order, and theirs is an absolute disaster over at the province right now. $11 billion a year in servicing our debt. Like, and she's out there spending money, hundreds of millions of dollars that she doesn't have. Be it the big yellow rubber ducky that she went out and bought for $100 and some odd thousand on borrowed money. You have to wonder, how do these people get elected? It's staggering. It's really, really staggering. When people go out there and they don't realize the debt that's accumulating. They think it's the government, it's us. And Jerry made a good point. They calculate all the residents in Ontario and divide by 12 million versus it's 20,000. It's not. It's actually the taxpayers. So it's more like $40,000 to $50,000. Staggering numbers. Absolutely staggering numbers, folks. I can assure you one thing. In September, there's going to be a little bit of a change. I'm going to be out there speaking out a little more. I have a decision to be made, either run for the province or run for the city and straighten out the colossal mess. Because right now, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Right now, folks, no matter if it's the federal government, $25 billion in debt, or billions of dollars that the province is laid on our shoulders, or if it's the city, I can assure you I'll be out there voicing the taxpayers' voice, being the voice for each and every one of you. It sounds like my time's up. I'm getting carried away, David? Okay, last minute of play. I'll wrap this up because I could speak here for another half an hour about the wasted money. Anyways, folks, you get my point. You ever need help? People have their cell phones out? I'm going to give you my number. Okay, like Rob did. The only politician in the country, you call him at home, 11 o'clock at night, he'd pick up, Rob Ford, Mayor of Toronto, can I help you? So my number is 416, and you can pass it around. 805-2156. Better known as the taxpayers line. You see corruption, you have a problem. I don't care if you have a pothole that's bothering you every day when you pull out of your car and no one's listening to you. Call me. I promise you one thing. You'll get a return call. I get about 60, 70 calls a day. It might take me a day or two, but you're getting a return call. And need be, I'll be at your front door. I appreciate the support today. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.